but I want to talk about the most compressed and about informationally compressed in freak theory, in my view, item in the news sphere is the meme, right? So the meme is, and this is where I like getting freak theory into informational compression. It has so many. So yeah, I'm just talking about one aspect here, but the meme for me, you know, you have ideation, you compress that ideation into language, and you compress it into a meme or whatever, and all this information from the original inspiration, the moment, is sort of lost in an informational entropy sort of sense, and when it's compressed into these forms. Now, the reason we compress them is to transmit them, right? We compress it to language so we can communicate. We compress it into when we press send, the internet literally compresses our bits so that it can move it. Then the meme itself, in its interpretation, is compressed mentally by translation to again move it into the subject. And so we have this extreme hyperobject medium of the meme that is by definition a compression of information in every way. And what's interesting about the meme to me is that, talk about projections, the meme that, and whether we're talking about a flag or a mascot or a whatever it is, that we can project ourselves, our sense of identity into these things, and thereby transmute and transfer our soul or our sense of being into something immortal. We have here with the meme sort of the ultimate immortality machine. And and again, I think we talked about this last time, but just the fact that you give it a name, Utah, the fact that I gave it a name, freak theory. Well, obviously we're trying to do something here, right? We're trying to maybe, we've created a sort of membrane. We're compressing our ideas so that we can give them to people, right? And then those people are going to take them and compress them and give them to other people, we hope. Now, what's interesting about this is that the more they compress it, the more nuance the item loses. However, as you and I have talked about, we hope that compression is lossless as opposed to loss. And that somehow we can create compressions that are lossless and that they look like these sort of unanalyzable synthomes, like Lacanian sort of like greased up synthomes from a distance. But if you get inside of them, all the nuance is somehow preserved.
It's like a zip file.
It's like a zip file. And so in freak theory, that would be sort of, we have the idea, we compress it, we've created a new equilibrium, we put a new, more ideas, we compress it, and then we get to our sort of like, ideal state of compression. We try and pass it on, hoping that a rarefaction can happen where the accordion comes out and you end up seeing you can go through it and get into the nuance. And anyway, so yeah, you can also view this stuff, visualize this stuff that way.
Yeah, so this is what the coin, like the architecture of coin is exactly what you just described in many ways. So like when you do this, on the one side, the human identity function, you rotate that, then you activate. Okay, now that serves as a compression for your self-consciousness, your human identity function, and then your place in the world. And then you flip the coin, and the me flower, it's an MEME flower portal, meme portal, because exactly what you said in relationship.
Right. Oh, wow. Good. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah. So it actually is a tunnel of meme that takes you through the fifth joint point and compresses itself in that regard. It's exactly how it's designed.
That's awesome. I love it. So when you're beam me up, Scotty, where does it take you?
It takes us into the fifth dimension. It takes into which is the singularity on the other hand. So in terms of another thing, the abstention that's calling us. So one of my most the most empirical spiritual reality, which is exactly all the shit that you were pointing to in many ways, is my relationship to the singularity. Okay. So the singularity, which would be basically the compression of all of our culture, then down compressed into a flat line, then ultimately then affords the next floor. Okay.
Yes. And that's the global brain moment.
That's the global brain moment. Exactly. Yeah. And so I did the whole Tree of Knowledge thing, 1997, stone, boom, 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 pop it out. And like, oh my God. And then 6 months later, or whatever, a year later, whenever the fuck it's like, what the fuck are these things? Okay. What is matter? What is life? What is mind? What is culture? As these cones coming out of this. And then it's like, God, well, definitely life, mind, and culture emerge out of as novel planes of frequency behavior, okay, as dimensions of complexification that are mediated by information processing and communication. So you get DNA, RNA cells, you get brains in animals, and you get language in people. Okay, and that's culture, person, mental, animal, cell, life, and so each one of those is these networks. Well, then if you're like, well, if the key then is to lay down an information processing and communication network that affords a macro level exchange and dynamic, well, fuck, the 20th century lays down the internet. It lays down artificial intelligence. We create our systems of information interface, and the global sensorium is now getting laid down. So it's like we've laid down the nervous system just before the Cambrian explosion blew brains into the world and created animals. And just before our symbol hanging turned into propositional language and created culture, well, we now created the internet. And now the 21st century is going to be the portal through the internet. Okay. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, that's going to be the fucking fifth joint point. And then the question is, can we thread the needle, okay, through the fifth joint point? Well, then to get to your point about like these macro magnetic zeros, I then learn about the whole singularity world. Okay, so the singularity world is checking the compression of inventions, how fast they actually happen, and time between inventions is shrinking. Okay. Yeah. All right. So the speed with which new shit's happening is happening faster and faster and faster. Okay. Exactly. So time is going to zero per each intervention. And as the limit function goes down to zero, a mathematical singularity is 0 over 1. That as the limit function goes to 0. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's and then what you get is you get the actual.
And then you have 1. You have literally the number 1.
You have well, that's it. And then the self one portal meme through the cultural structure is the fucking is my version, my thread on the vacuum, and your thread on frequency, and we're all getting tied together. And then I learned. So the thing that's super fucking weird is that when people started doing calculations on the singularity, I did this with Daniel Frege and Owen Cox when we did the techno-social singularity. I took them through this. This is the big history. People started looking at this singularity thing, and this Russian guy who's watching Ray Kurzweil in the West, he gathers all this Eastern data. So he grabs this whole different data set of the frequency of new shit that's happening. Okay, different data set. And then he's like, oh, I can compare these two radically different data sets on the frequency of change. And I can now correct for Ray Kurzweil's error. The actual curvature is an hyper exponential, not just an exponential, it's a hyper exponential. What that means is when he adds the hyper exponential, Ray Kurzweil estimated like 2045. The Russian analysis with both data sets and the hyper exponential brings the two lines at a crossing to go to 1 over 0, or the new 1, or the singularity, to be between 2027 on one line and 2029 on the other. Meaning that between 2028, there is an emerging vertical singularity that's basically lining up this fucking portal right at fucking 8 fucking years from now, 7 fucking years from now. Is like, and we're just like, and I look at my life and it's like, my life is getting pulled into some meta modern 5th dimensional vortex. That's what, that is what when I say my soul is called to that hasn't happened yet. that's in the future. And yet we can empirically draw the line. So to me, as a skeptical, generally built as a skeptic, I see that empirical data and it's like, I feel that, I see that there's goddamn lines that data, you got to be like, all right, man, there's something seriously going on here. There's some magnetic zero in the cosmos that's pulling us towards something.
Yeah, exactly.